ആകാശവാണി വിദ്യാഭ്യാസ രംഗം.
വിജയവാണി SSLC പരീക്ഷാ സഹായി. ഇംഗ്ലീഷ് പാഠഭാഗങ്ങളെ ആസ്പദമാക്കിയുള്ള രണ്ടാമത്തെ ക്ലാസ് അവതരിപ്പിക്കുന്നത് കോട്ടൺ ഹിൽ ഗവൺമെന്റ് ഗേൾസ് ഹയർ സെക്കൻഡറി സ്കൂൾ അധ്യാപകനും മുൻ SERT റിസർച്ച് ഓഫീസറുമായ ജോസ് ഡി സുജീവ്.
Welcome back. We'll move on to the third unit, which is Lore of Values. Again, we have two prose lessons and a poem. The prose lessons are The Best Investment I Ever Made by A.J. Cronin and The Danger of a Single Story by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. The poem is The Ballad of Father Gilligan by W.B. Yeats. The Best Investment I Ever Made, we have the narrator, the writer itself, Dr. A.J. Cronin is the narrator. Mr. John, Mrs. John, the sergeant, landlady are the main characters. Actually, the story is written on the base. Writer is on a travel or a voyage from America to London. He is traveling by ship. The narrator sees a passenger who is watching him closely on the promenade deck. And he notices the man with his wife the next day also. So they needed something to talk to him. But at last we see that she compels her husband to talk to the doctor. He identifies that this man was Mr. John and he was a stranger. He approaches to the doctor or the narrator and gives him his visiting card, even though he could not identify or he could not recognize that man at the first sight. And we move on to the second part of that story. That's a flashback of the story where we see that something happened in years back. And John himself introduces him as a solicitor or a lawyer who is working in the field of youth welfare also. He works as a director in an organization also. And the work they are doing is they help the delinquent adolescents and bring them back to a good life. John helps the doctor to identify him. Doctor recalls the past incident years back that happened at the landlady's attic. Young John falls into bad company and he loses all his money in gambling, pledges all his belongings and borrows money from all sources. He steals money from the office safe in an attempt to recoup the lost money. Unable to recoup the money or replace the money, he attempts suicide. Saved by the doctor, landlady and the sergeant, or he gets a fresh start in his life. The sergeant agrees not to register the case. The landlady also waived the rent and the doctor gave him £7 and 10 shillings to replace in the office safe. The doctor feels proud of his investment he made around 25 years ago because he says that it was the best investment he ever made because it helped to change the life of a person to a better way. We see prose lesson is a speech by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, who is an African writer. In the first unit we had Ruskin Bond is an Indian writer, Vaikam Muhammad Bashir who is a Malayalam writer, and the second unit we had Satyajit Roy, again an English writer, then Majid Majidi who is an Iranian writer. In the third unit now we saw Dr. A.J. Cronin who is an Irish writer. Now see Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie who is an African writer. So various cultures are incorporated or included in the texts that we are studying. So we'll just have a look at that Danger of a Single Story. Danger of a Single Story, the Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie is making a speech. She introduces herself as a storyteller. She was an early reader and writer. She reads British and American children's books. Her early writings were influenced by these foreign books. She says that whatever she read was reflected in her writing. So she began to read African writings also. So later she came to identify that there are many books in African literature. So she started reading that books and she realized that the characters could be like herself. Before that, she thought that the characters should be white, the characters should eat apples. And later she says about her family, a mother who was an administrator, and she had a domestic helper at her home. Such domestic helper was Fid. One day she visited Fid's house along with her mother, and she knew about Fid's poverty. We see every time the mother also insisted to see how Fid's family lived. Whenever she was wasting her food, the mother would say to her that you should look at people who are suffering, even not getting the wasted food that you are wasting here. See, shocked to see the beautifully patterned basket, she was very much shocked when she saw that a very beautifully patterned basket was made by Fitz' brother, because she thought that they had no ability to do such things. Her single story about Fitz's family changes after that incident. She later leaves to America for higher studies, where she had an American roommate, and this American roommate also was shocked by her hearing her English as well as her music preferences. And the professor felt that her characters were not authentically African, because he says that her characters can drive cars, they can read English. So he says that they were not authentically African. But Adichie concludes that speech by saying that all these happen due to the danger of a single story. We have a thought in our mind, we have a story in our mind which says that African people are not able to do all these things. They are not incapable of doing all these things. We'll next move on to the poem by W.B. Yeats, The Ballad of Father Gilligan. The theme of the poem is the everlasting benevolence of God on all his creations. Actually, we see that the old priest, who is weary and sad, was helped by an unknown hand that has been thinks that benevolence of God. There are enough number of rhyming words. The line pattern is a 4-line pattern. There are 12 stanzas, and the poem is in the form of a ballad or a narrative or a musical and dramatic poem. As merry as a bird is a simile used in that poem. God covered the world with shade is a metaphor. Enough number of visual images and auditory images are there. For half his flock, no rest nor joy nor peace. All these are examples of alliteration, and the rhyme scheme is ABCB. We'll move on to the next unit, 4th unit, that is Flights of Fancy. The Scholarship Jacket is a story by Martha Salinas. It talks about a girl named Martha, who is a 14-year-old Mexican girl who is studying in a Texas school. She is very hardworking and studious and a good athlete. But she is ambitious. She was a straight A-grade student since first grade. So she worked hard and she expected the scholarship jacket that was once received by her elder sister. But there were some problems that occurs in between to get that scholarship jacket. So that's what we see. We see grandfather and principal are some other characters, as well as Mr. Skimmid and Mr. Boone are the other characters. We'll just have a short look at that events. Texas school presents a scholarship jacket to the class valedictorian. Martha dreams of getting that jacket. One day she overhears an argument between Mr. Skimmid and Mr. Boone. The principal informs her of the change in policy and demands Martha to pay $15 for the scholarship jacket. She informs principal's message to her grandfather and asks for the money. Grandfather disagrees with the change in the policies, and he says that the scholarship jacket should not be bought using money. A scholarship jacket is not a thing that should be bought. And Martha informs grandfather's decision to the principal, and the principal changes his decision. Martha gets the scholarship jacket. So that's how that story develops. And നിങ്ങൾക്ക് എല്ലാവർക്കും അറിയാം, ഒരു ആദ്യ ഭാഗങ്ങൾ കേൾക്കുമ്പോൾ നമുക്ക് ആ കഥയിലൊന്നും ഇല്ലാന്ന് തോന്നും. പക്ഷേ അതിൻ്റെ പകുതി കഴിയുമ്പോഴാണ് പ്രധാനപ്പെട്ട കഥ വരുന്നത് എന്നുള്ളത് നിങ്ങൾക്ക് മനസ്സിലായിട്ടുണ്ടാവും. അത് ആ രീതിയിൽ മനസ്സിലാക്കി നിങ്ങൾക്ക് എഴുതാവുന്നതാണ്. നെക്സ്റ്റ് വൺ ഈസ് എ വൺ ആക്ട് പ്ലേ. നാടകം ആണ്, ഏകാംഗ നാടകം എന്ന് മലയാളത്തിൽ പറയുന്നതാണ്. അതിലെ പ്രധാനപ്പെട്ട കഥാപാത്രങ്ങളെ നിങ്ങൾക്ക് പരിചയപ്പെട്ടിട്ടുണ്ടാവും. ജാക്കും ജില്ലും ഓണ്ട് ജെയിനുമാണ്. ജാക്ക് ജില്ലും ഒരു വീട്ടിൽ താമസിക്കുകയാണ്. വേർ ദ ഓൺ ജെയിൻ ഇസ് കമ്മിങ് ടു വിസിറ്റ് ദം. അതാണ് ആ കഥയുടെ തുടക്കം. ആൻഡ് ജാക്ക് ആൻഡ് ജിൽ, യങ് married couple, they had a small boy also, and they were very much interested in buying things. Not buying things in installments. That was their interest. And when Aunt Jane visits the Jill's or Jack's house, she finds them leading a luxurious life. Aunt Jane understands that Jill had everything, but they owned anything. They owned nothing. Aunt Jane was shocked at the way Jack and Jill lived in debt. Actually, they were living in debt because everything was in installments. Aunt Jane was glad that the couple had everything, but she didn't like the idea of borrowing money to pay the installments. Aunt Jane scolded them and gave them a check to make at least one thing completely their own. According to Jack and Jill, they had purchased their baby from Dr. Martin. They have not completely given the payment to Dr. Martin. Finally, the couple become the complete owner of their baby because Jill sends the money to the check to the doctor for the complete payment. So the play brings out the flaws of the buy and pay later, this marketing system that the contemporary society follows, like the installment schemes and all those things. We'll just have a quick look at the poem also. A poem by Pablo Neruda, who is a Chilean writer. The name of the poem is Poetry, where we see the experiences of the poet embracing and being embraced by creativity. And he says that something started in my soul. So that the alliteration, something started in my soul, fever or forgotten wings. Some symbols are also there, like the fire, the flowers. Then personification, poetry arrived in search of me. Visual images also found in that poem. There's a hyperbole also. I was without a face is a hyperbole, or I wheeled with the stars is another example. And the auditory images are also there. We can find such examples in that poem. Some suggested opposites are used in the poem, like pure nonsense, pure wisdom of someone who knows nothing. Such usages or poetic devices can be found in that poem also.
ഇംഗ്ലീഷ് പാഠഭാഗങ്ങളെ ആസ്പദമാക്കിയുള്ള രണ്ടാമത്തെ ക്ലാസ് അവതരിപ്പിച്ചത് കോട്ടൺ ഹിൽ ഗവൺമെന്റ് ഗേൾസ് ഹയർ സെക്കൻഡറി സ്കൂൾ അധ്യാപകനും മുൻ SCERT റിസർച്ച് ഓഫീസറുമായ ജോസ് ഡി സുജീവ്. വിജയവാണി SSLC പരീക്ഷാ സഹായി.
വിദ്യാഭ്യാസ രംഗം സമാപിച്ചു.